We felt it before we heard anything. A low pressure in the chest, where a sound should be. The ground was humming. Not shaking, humming. Too deep for our ears, deep enough for our bones. Vance checked the instruments twice. Nothing on the audio. Nothing on the seismic. Just that pressure, rolling up through the soles of our boots and sitting behind the ribs. We had landed on 100 dead worlds and a few living ones. We had never landed on one that was talking. This is what we found on THERION, and we're still trying to understand it. Exploration log, THERION. Vessel, Aurelia 5. Status, hostile. The scans had called it paradise. Thick air, heavy with oxygen. Warm, wet. Green from pole to pole. A gravity light enough that the first step off the ramp nearly put Sato on her face. We all came down too hard and too high, like the planet had given us back something we didn't know Earth was taking. Okafor was the first to say the word out loud. "This is wrong," she said. "Not bad wrong, big wrong." Because on Earth, there's a ceiling. A body can only get so large before its own weight crushes it. Double the size, and you carry 8 times the load on bones that only grew 4 times as strong. The largest thing that ever walked our world topped out around 100 tons, and it could barely move. That's the law. Gravity sets the ceiling. Here, the ceiling was gone. Lighter gravity, thicker air, more oxygen than any lung on Earth ever breathed. Every limit we knew about how big a living thing could get had been quietly lifted. We just hadn't met anything yet. We walked into the tree line to find out. The forest didn't have a canopy. It had a ceiling we couldn't see. Trunks went up past the mist and kept going, wide as towers at the base, ridged like the legs of something that should have been an animal. Light came down in long green shafts, thick with floating spores, and where it touched the ground, the moss was waist-deep and soft as snow. Everything here had been told it could grow forever. Everything had believed it. And under all of it, that hum, still rolling through the dirt. Okafor crouched and pressed her palm flat to the moss. "It's coming from everywhere," she said, "and nowhere. It moves." We didn't understand it yet, so I'll tell you now, the way we'd learn it later. On Earth, the biggest animals don't talk the way we do. Elephants speak in sound too low for us to hear, and they don't just hear it, they feel it, through the pads of their feet, through the bone. Whales sing notes that cross an entire ocean. The bigger you are, the lower your voice, and the farther it carries. This whole forest was full of voices. We were standing in the middle of a conversation the size of a continent, and we were the only ones in it who couldn't hear a word. The trees thinned and the world opened up, and we forgot to be afraid for a while. Below us, the land fell away into a plain so wide the curve of the planet was the only thing that ended it, and the plain was moving. A herd, not hundreds, not thousands, more than we could count. Long-necked, slow-shouldered, each one bigger than a building, walking south in a river of bodies that stretched from one edge of sight to the other. Dust rose off them in a wall. The ground's hum had a rhythm now, a deep, slow pulse, and I understood we were hearing, feeling, the herd itself. Every animal in it calling to every other, low and constant, holding the whole migration together like a single mind made of muscle. Sato sat down in the grass without a word. Okafor was crying a little and didn't seem to know it. Even Vance had stopped counting exits. You spend your life being the most dangerous thing in every room. Then you stand on the edge of a plane on a world that never met you, and you watch 1,000 living mountains walk past, and something in the back of your skull, something very old, remembers what we used to be. Small. We used to be small. We had forgotten how that felt. The planet was about to remind us. The herd stopped, all of it, at once. A river of animals that hadn't broken stride in miles simply froze. Heads up, 10,000 of them facing the same line of trees at the western edge of the plain. The hum changed. The low, steady pulse climbed, higher, tighter, faster, and even without ears for it, we felt the change move through the ground and up our spines like cold water. It was fear. We were standing in a field of the largest animals we had ever seen, and every single one of them was afraid. "Down," Rhea said. "Get down, now!" We dropped into the grass, and across the plain, at the tree line, the herd began to run. Away from us, away from the trees, a stampede that turned the ground to thunder. Something had come out of the forest. We never got a clean look at it. That's the truth, and it's the part that still wakes me up. Just an impression, low and fast along the tree line, pacing the herd. Too quick for its size, and its size was enormous. Picking, choosing, in no hurry at all. A thing that hunted the giants. Think about that for a second. On a world where the prey is the size of buildings, where the thing that eats grass could step on our ship by accident. Something had evolved to hunt those. Something faster and patient and worse. We had spent an hour feeling small in the most peaceful way a person can. Small the way you feel under a night sky. This was the other kind of small. The kind your body knows before your mind does. The kind that empties your stomach and tells your legs to move before anyone gives an order. And between it and the herd, flat in the grass, 4 warm, small bodies it had not noticed yet. We went the only way we could, away from the open, down toward the water. The plane dropped into wetland, black pools, reeds taller than the ship, air gone thick and still and ringing with insects the size of birds. Carboniferous, Okafor called it, in a whisper. The word for an age on Earth when the air ran so rich with oxygen that dragonflies grew wings as wide as your arms. That age ended on Earth when the oxygen fell. The giants of the air couldn't breathe anymore, and they shrank, and then they were gone. Here, the oxygen never fell. That age had never ended. Things with too many legs moved in the reeds. Long bodies, too many joints, wet and patient in the dark, and we did not look closely. We had stopped wanting to know how big anything was. We moved low and slow, and we did not talk, because we had learned the first rule of this world without anyone teaching it. When the ground goes quiet, run. The hum had followed us out of the plane, faint but there, the background voice of a living world. And then, ahead of us, in a wide, low valley choked with moss and mist, it stopped. No pressure, no pulse, no insects. Silence. Real silence, the first we'd felt since we landed. After everything else, silence should have been a relief. It was the most frightening thing on the planet. "Whatever's hunting won't follow us into a dead spot," Vance said. "Nothing's in there. We cut across, we lose it." It was good logic. It was the only logic we had. We went down into the quiet valley, into the deep moss, between 2 long, low ridges that ran the length of it like the sides of a bowl. The footing was strange, springy, warm under the cold moss, rising and falling in a slow, wide rhythm I told myself was the wind. We were halfway across when Sato stopped walking. "Reyes," she said very carefully, "the ground is breathing." We all felt it then. The whole valley floor lifted, paused, and settled, slow, enormous, deliberate, and the hum came back. But not from far away this time, from below us, from directly below our feet. A single low note, so deep it wasn't a sound at all, just the whole world pressing up against the bottoms of our boots. The ridges on either side of us weren't ridges, they were ribs. It woke up under us. The moss split in long lines as the ground rolled and the valley rose. Not a hill, not a quake, but a back. A vast, living back the length of a city, lifting us into the air on the slow tide of a breath. We ran. There was nothing else to do. We ran across the moving flank of a sleeping mountain as it stood up out of its own valley. Trees that had grown on its back for 100 years tore loose and fell around us. Whole ecosystems lived on this thing. Birds nested in it. There were animals up here that had been born on its back and would die on its back and never once touch the ground. We were fleas on the hide of a god that had grown so large the planet had buried it in its own forest, and the forest had simply moved on. Vance was shouting numbers, how high we were, how fast it was rising. And then he stopped, because the numbers had stopped meaning anything. There is no procedure for this. There is no training. You just hold on to the moss and try not to slide off the back of something that does not know you exist, and that could end you without ever knowing it had. This was the ceiling, gone. This was what 100 tons becomes when gravity stops saying no. It got its legs under it, and the horizon dropped, and for one impossible moment, we stood higher than we had ever stood on solid ground, on the shoulders of a living thing the size of a hill. And from up there, finally, we could see the rest of the valley beyond. And that's when we saw it. The dead place. Past the Titan, past the green, the land changed. A circle of ground, miles across, where nothing grew and nothing moved and nothing made a sound. Not burned, not poisoned, just abandoned. The grass stopped at its edge like a line had been drawn. The herd's paths bent around it. Even the great beast under us, now fully awake, turned its huge, slow head toward that circle and would not take a single step closer. The most dangerous thing we'd seen all day was afraid of it too. A whole world of giants, and every one of them, by instinct, by blood, gave that one piece of ground a wide berth. We should have done the same. But Okafor had already seen what was at the center of it, and she couldn't look away. And neither, God help us, could the rest of us. Because in the middle of the silence, in the middle of the one place on a living planet where life refused to go, there was something that did not grow there. Something with edges. We climbed down off the Titan at the edge of the dead zone, and we walked the last of the way in on foot, into the silence, where our own footsteps were suddenly the loudest thing in the world. It sat at the exact center, not a creature, not a ruin grown over by time, a shape with straight lines and clean angles, half sunk in ground that had refused to heal around it, and beside it, the bones. The skeleton of a titan, one of the great ones, bigger than the beast we'd just outrun. But it hadn't died the way things die here. Nothing had eaten it. Nothing had brought it down in a fight. There was a single cut through it. One. Clean and deep and far too straight for any tooth or claw on this planet. Through a bone as wide as a road, like the whole animal had simply been opened by something that did not need to struggle. Okafor knelt by the shape at the center and brushed the dirt off its edge. "This isn't from here," she said. Her voice didn't sound like hers. "Nothing on this planet has corners. Nothing alive here ever made a straight line in its life." I want to be clear about what that means. Everything on THERION grew. Bone, shell, wood, stone, shaped by water. Every line on this world was a curve, because that is what living things make. Branches, ribs, riverbeds. This had been built by something that started with a flat edge and a right angle and a plan. Sato reached out to touch it, and Reyes caught her wrist without a word, and for once, Sato didn't argue. None of us wanted to be the one who found out what it did to the Titan. The hum we'd felt across the whole world, the voices of 1 billion living things, had stopped at the edge of this circle. Not because the giants couldn't come here, because something had come here first and done this, and left a fear so deep it had soaked down into the blood of every living thing on the planet, generation after generation, until avoiding this one patch of ground wasn't a choice anymore. It was instinct. The whole world remembered it. None of them had ever seen it. We didn't stay long. You don't, in a place that an entire planet of monsters is too afraid to enter. We took what readings we could. We mapped the shape. We did not touch the cut. And we went back the way we came, across the dead ground and out into the noise of the living world. And I have never in my life been so grateful to feel the earth start humming under my feet again. The herd still moved. The Titan still stood, watching us go, small now in the distance. THERION was still alive, still impossibly, beautifully alive. Every limit lifted, every creature reaching for a ceiling that wasn't there. But it had a wound in the middle of it that would not close. We left THERION behind, but it did not leave us. Somewhere ahead, another world is waiting, and the Aurelia is already moving toward it. We almost didn't make the connection. We were tired and shaken and glad to be alive. It was Okafor, late that night, who pulled up the image. The shape at the center of the dead zone, those clean, impossible lines, and set it beside another picture. The one we'd carried out of a golden temple a world ago, copied off the oldest stone in a city that worshipped a god from the sky. The bright thing the Orexis faithful had been waiting 10,000 years to see come home. The two shapes were not the same. But they were not different either. The same wrong lines, the same edges that no hand we knew had ever drawn. On one world, a people had spent 10,000 years building gold towers to welcome it back. On this one, with no people at all, no temples, no priests, the welcome was different. Here, every living thing for 1,000 miles had learned, in its bones, to run. A world that loved it, a world that feared it. Two planets that had never met, on opposite ends of the dark, and the only thing they had in common was the shape of the thing that came before us. And in between them, in the cold dark we were already crossing, the same question, growing heavier with every world. Whatever it was, it had been here first. On THERION, on Orexis, on the worlds before them, always first, always gone by the time we arrive. But on Orexis, it had left them gold to wait beside. Here, It had left a grave the size of a mountain and a planet too frightened to bury it. If a thing can be a god on one world and a nightmare on the next, what does it want? If you want to travel with us aboard the Aurelia, subscribe. A new world every week.